let me come here to speak real quick. I just wanted to say hi before we get started. Because I joined the staff in November, but because of COVID precautions, this is really one of the first big in-person events that we've been able to invite folks to. So I'm just really happy to see all of the people who were able to come tonight, and hello to everybody who's watching from home. I am just so excited that our first public issues forum of the year is about reproductive justice. For me personally, tonight's event brings together two things I care very deeply about: civic engagement and participation in democracy, and abortion access. You can probably pick out my vehicle in the parking lot. It's the one covered in bean stickers and stickers that say things like abortion and healthcare. That's my motto. I've been a volunteer with Women's Medical Fund of Wisconsin for several years, with Cynthia and Katrina, and joined the board of directors last summer. And we've all heard the stories of the enormous economic, legal, medical, and emotional challenges and risks that people in Wisconsin are already facing since the U.S. Supreme Court decision. The League of Women Voters, as Barb said, is a nonpartisan organization that does not support any candidate or any party, but we do take positions on issues that matter. And on the matter of abortion, we believe all people deserve access to abortion care when they need it, on a timeline of their choosing, and in a community and environment where they trust and feel safe. So thank you all very much tonight for tuning in online, for coming to Madison College and hosting us. Thank you to all of our panelists, and I will turn it over to Louise.
So, my privilege to read the land acknowledgement working statement. In owning our past and charting our future, we, the League of Women Voters in Maine County, recognize the Indigenous peoples who are the original stewards of the land on which we now live, while we struggle to learn more about the current and ongoing context of colonialism. League formation began 11th century ago in 1920 with women's suffrage. But nearly 2 centuries ago, even prior to the 1840 creation of the state of Wisconsin, an 1832 treaty forced the Ho-Chunk to cede their territory to control 4 lakes. Both the federal and state governments repeatedly, but unsuccessfully, sought to forcibly remove the Ho-Chunk from Wisconsin. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connections across all barriers of heritage and difference. We continue our effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. In Maine County, we are all standing on the stolen ancestral lands of the Ho-Chunk people. We pay respect to their elders, past, present, and future. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together today. A working group is being formed within League of Women Voters with knowledge passed on while nurturing present and future commitment to action. Working together to understand the histories and priorities of Indigenous communities. The League of Women Voters in Maine County is grateful for the past, present, and future guidance of all Wisconsin's Native nations.
Hi, everyone. This is My Vote, Reproductive and Civil Rights, a forum from the League of Women Voters, Dane County. I'm Joy Cardine. I'm a member of the Dane County League's Program Committee. I'm a board member of the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin. And as mentioned, I'm also a retired Wisconsin Public Radio talk show host. And I talk about these issues many times while working for Wisconsin Public Radio. And I never thought that I would be here tonight hosting this forum on this issue. I will be your moderator this evening. We are going to be discussing with our 4 panelists and with you, I hope, the legal, social, political, and health consequences of the Supreme Court ruling that overturned Roe versus Wade. How it's affecting us in Wisconsin, who about it, how we can restore reproductive freedom here, and what we can do to provide access to reproductive health care services in the meantime. We welcome your questions and your suggestions and maybe even your experiences. We can pass out cards, or you may have picked up a card when you came in. Please write your question on that card and someone will pick it up from you and I will include it in our conversation. You can just raise your hand if you have a card in the audience here at Madison College. Those of you who are watching on Zoom, please put your question in the chat feature, and again, I will present our panelists as we move along. We have with us tonight, starting on my far left, Cynthia Lynn, Vice President of WMF of Wisconsin and Deputy Director of Movement Building at the National Network of Abortion Funds. Katrina Morrison, Director of Policy, Advocacy, and Outreach at the Foundation for Black Women's Wellness. Nicole Safar, who is Executive Director of Law Forward, and Amy Williamson, Associate Director of the UW Collaborative for Reproductive Equity, or CORE. Thanks to all of you for being with us tonight. And I would like to start by having you tell our audience more about yourself and your organization. Please include the work that you do or have done regarding reproductive rights, elder access, and why the overturning of Roe v. Wade is so concerning to you and your organization. We'll start with.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for inviting us. It's a real honor to be here, even though it's terrible to be speaking about this issue under these circumstances. Thank you to those of you who came out today in person and those who are tuning in on Zoom. As Joy said, my name is Cynthia Lynn. I'm joined to with they pronouns. And I'm the board vice president of Women's Medical Fund in Wisconsin, or Wisconsin. WMF is one of 3 abortion funds that work out of Wisconsin. And abortion funds are organizations that support people who can't afford the full cost of an abortion. That's often beyond the clinical cost, but also travel, lodging, childcare, block wages, often, other kinds of support, and impacts that add up to the real cost of abortion, which, as we all know, is much deeper and affects people in these ways. So WMF, like other abortion funds, support people to be able to access an abortion, largely through grassroots fundraising, which is a form of redistributing wealth, to reflect the way that we should be caring for people to be able to access basic health care. WMF has been around since 1972, and over the past couple of years has helped achieve 1,200 Wisconsinites access abortion, and that number is continuing to grow. WMF is in the process of a name change because we know that not only cisgender women need abortions and have abortions, but we are growing in our commitment to gender inclusion and justice. So we'll get some more from us on that, but I will say WMF should have an abortion. As Joy mentioned, I'm also the Deputy Director of Movement Building at the National Network of Abortion Funds, which is my day job. I'm in how to net funds. NAAF organizes the volunteer members of the network, like WMF, and like Options and Freedom Funds, the other 2 Wisconsin abortion funds, in order to continue supporting people to access abortion, as well as to change culture and the political system, so that we can access privileges in the first place. Why the overturning of Roe v. Wade is important to these 2 organizations is that for many of the people that call abortion funds for support, they have already been living in a post-Roe United States, right? Legal rights are needed without access. And with the overturn of Roe v. Wade, there was a limited constitutional.
Sorry, we're troubleshooting online audio.
Okay.
Yep.
Can you hear me now? No. My mic is.
Oh, hold on.
Because of the online audio issue that the mics off.
This is how we read this. Still not working though.
Go ahead and talk.
Okay. You can go ahead. Let's talk. Okay, no,
No, you use the mics because we need
okay, the
it.
mic is not working. We're gonna do that. Okay, great. Thank you. For one time, with the overturn of Roe v. Wade and the limited constitutional protection of the legal right to abortion that it provided, we'll see only worsened divides between those who can afford the full class and those who cannot. And that, comes down to those who are centered in on that. Those who's not much more to say about that.
Hi everyone. It is working?
Yes.
Okay, amazing. Well, hello. As you all know, my name is Katrina Morrison. I am really excited to be joining you all tonight for this really impactful and important conversation. So I work at the Foundation for Black Women's Wellness, and I serve as the Director of Policy, Advocacy, and Outreach. So the Foundation for Black Women's Wellness, we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary, and so the focus of the Foundation for Black Women's Wellness is really to work effortlessly through education, through direct support, through advocacy, to eliminate health disparities and other barriers impacting the lives of Black women, our families, and our communities. And so everything we do at the Foundation for Black Women's Wellness is rooted in a world that we envision where Black women are healthy, thriving, and free. And so that's the frame to which we approach everything, including the issue of abortion access and the overturn of Roe versus Wade. The reason that the overturn of Roe is so important for us to discuss, particularly at the Foundation, is because for Black women, reproductive rights and abortion access is so much more than just having the right. As Cynthia mentioned, it's really about having control over our own bodies. Because since the moment Black women have been brought to the United States as enslaved peoples, we have not been given control over our own bodies. And I'm really happy to discuss that in extensive detail to come. But just to preview a bit, what we're talking about is that as enslaved people, Black women were inhumanely experimented upon to pursue and further the advancement of gynecology medicine and gynecology practices. Black women were not given any sort of, what's the word? Anesthesia. Yes, it escaped my mind for a moment, but these inhumane experiments included experimenting on Black women without anesthesia because the medical belief was that Black women don't feel pain. And still today, we see in our healthcare system, in our doctors' offices, this belief perpetuated that Black women don't feel pain. And after the inhumane experimentation, the reproductive oppression didn't stop there. Black women were forcibly sterilized. Black women have been the subject of eugenics movements and campaigns, and just so many other things, coercive birth control tactics, a litany of moments in our nation's history in which Black women's bodily autonomy was not respected and was not protected. And so at the Foundation for Black Women's Wellness, that's the perspective that we really bring to the conversation, one that centers Black women, our voices our lived experiences and our perspective in the abortion access conversation, because it's a perspective that has been sorely missing in all women's and reproductive rights movements to date. And so the last thing I will tell you all is just a tad more about me, because I will be bringing that context to this conversation as well. I am a third-year law student at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I also proudly serve alongside Cynthia and Wendy on the Women's Medical Fund Board of Directors, which is Wisconsin's all-state wide abortion fund, as you heard earlier. So with that, I'll pass it to Nicole.
Thanks, Katrina. It's on. Okay, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole Spar, and I am Lauder. Okay. And I just want to say thank you so much to the League for inviting me here tonight to sit here with these wonderful panelists. I think that folks are going to have a lot to learn from their experiences and from their organizations. And I want to show tonight a little bit as myself. I'll definitely talk about my organization. But I think this is something that has the Dobbs decision overturning of Roe is something that has been hanging heavily on my mind, not just since June or April when the legal decision came, but for the last couple of years. I think as soon as Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away, those of us in the Reproductive movement knew this day was coming, and it was just a matter of when. And even though we knew that, and even though so many women and people that can get pregnant in our country have been living without abortion access for years in Texas and across the South, I still found the day here in the dust. And Wisconsin is a state without abortion access today. I didn't fully appreciate what it would feel like to live in a state that I've spent 20 years of my career building a progressive movement in, and I have to say that. So it just sucks, and I so appreciate the community with people who and give me perspective and help me think about the future, and the folks on this panel are some of us. I'm grateful to be here. Most of my career has been about building power for reproductive freedom. I've spent over 14 years at Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin, another almost 2 in the Evers administration at the Department of Health Services. And last year, I made the move to focus a little bit more broadly and really think about connecting the dots between the erosion of our democracy and the restriction and elimination of the freedoms that we've been seeing the last couple of years. I now am with a organization, a pretty new organization here in Wisconsin called Law Forward. It's a pro-democracy nonprofit that does impact litigation and legal support to advance effective and strengthen democracy. And I just want to spend a couple of minutes going a little bit more broad about how this attack on democracy is connected to the erosion of our fundamental freedoms, like our right to bodily autonomy. I think over the last 6 years, and maybe even the last 12 years in Wisconsin, our movement has really experienced a roller coaster between progressive champions and right-wing activists. And from this chaos, one thing that I've pulled out and I've learned is that we believe this story about democracy in America. One person, one vote, freest and fairest in the world. And that's what we believe in. That's what we're taught. If we are taught civics, that's what we're taught. That's the way that our media presents things. That is like the brain we have. Yet our government systems are not built at all to reflect this deeply held belief. From the filibuster to the electoral college, partisan gerrymandering, our systems allow minority factions to overrule majority preference. Historically and today, this is by design, this is on purpose. Our system of democracy is marred by this political inequality, and we face a coordinated and well-funded effort by right-wing organizations to keep it that way. It's not an accident where we are today. Both the U.S. Constitution and the 1849 Wisconsin law banning abortion were written by white men who thought it was okay to own other people's property. Africans and indigenous people were enslaved for the economic benefit of these white men. These same men considered their wives and daughters as assets, controlling both their productivity and their reproduction. And it shouldn't be a surprise. The democracy they built was grounded in the political inequality, specifically to consolidate their power and to have power over the people that they thought were less than. The right-wing forces that we see today are using the same framing as those forces back then at the beginning of our founding. They are using coordinated effort to thwart the will of the people at the ballot box, in the courts, and through the violent mob we saw on January 6th, to really consolidate power among the wealthy white few. And it is no surprise the sequencing of these events that these right-wing actors want to subvert and sabotage our elections first and take away our fundamental rights next. So I'm talking more about the law and abortion as we go through the conversation, but I spend a lot of time thinking about how this bigger picture of democracy is so connected to the threat against our fundamental freedoms today. And thanks for letting me share that with you all.
Thank you. I'm really glad you did. My name is Amy Williamson, and I'm really glad to be here tonight. And I really appreciate the invitation. And I'm frankly honored to be sitting next to fine people here. Briefly, I work at the University of Wisconsin in the Department of OBGYN on a research initiative that's called the Collaborative Reproductive. We exist to examine the impact of policies and programs on people. In particular, we study reproduction, we study reproductive health, and a lot on abortion and contraception. And that's why we exist. We exist because we think we've got to start with good evidence to have good policy. And without it, we don't know what's happening. We can't move forward. We can't move forward. We are focused on this topic because we care about the things we can do to enhance and elevate reproductive health rights and justice in this country. But I really want to lean into what my colleagues have said about that rights are not meaningless, but don't have value without access to many of us. For my organization, why overturning Roe is important is because research is entirely clear on the impact of this. This is not debatable. We studied it. We study what's happening today and what the impacts are for lots of different people. But the research is clear. There's very strong evidence that these kind of abortion restrictions or restrictions in general have a devastating impact on people and on their futures and on their children's futures and on their autonomy and our families and our communities. It's not a question. There's well-established research points. Briefly about what Nicole said, denying people autonomy hurts those who have less power and much more than those who have power. And that differential is playing out in front of our eyes. And that the fundamental is that having reproductive autonomy is needed to achieve one's life goals and to have the dignity one seeks in our lives. All of that is well established in research. And that's why we have to keep practicing evidence and not let this happen without eyes.
Keep in mind, Amy, the next question that all of you can address is from your perspective. What are the most serious consequences of the decision that overturned Roe v. Wade? What's happening right now?
I'm going to keep, because of my identity here as a researcher, I'm going to keep my research hat on and talk again about what is clear about the research research is that abortion denial, so if you need an abortion, you choose to have an abortion, you can't get it. The research is clear that that denial has an impact on you as well as your family. And there's a really excellent study called the Paternally study, which was conducted over 5 years of follow-up with 1,000 people who denied abortion, which showed clearly it showed clearly that it has negative impacts on people's economic social security, their income level, their ability to achieve their educational goals. They are more likely to stay in relationships. They are more likely to, their kids are more likely to have developmental problems and low income themselves. I mean, it's just research that is unstable. Another thing, I have top 3 things on my mind about what this is so devastating is that we are hearing already about the impact of this law on pregnancy care. So people who are pregnant, choose to be pregnant, are happily pregnant, and this legal line or our state law now prevents, makes it illegal to have an abortion except in the life, to save the life of the mother. That line is not drawn in the sand somewhere for all to see. And the impact of that on people's lives is already emerging. I'm a researcher, so I have to say, we haven't completed the research yet, but we hear these anecdotes and lots of reporting about this. And we have our colleagues in Texas, where after SB8, it was their 6-week ban that occurred this fall, they have had time to assemble the evidence and have shown that providers are reporting heartbreaking outcomes for people who have pregnancy emergencies. It's not a drill, it's happening. So that's my number 2. And the third is something we've all mentioned, and that is those who already face the most structural inequities in their lives because of the way our country is structured, has always been structured, white supremacy, racism, and the after effects of colonialism will be hurt most by this. I have the money, I can pay to get, if I'm lucky, to get an appointment for an abortion out of state. Those who have less income have already lived in a post-war environment, as Katrina said, and actually simply said, where they were already there, and it's just, that's what I need to ask.
I agree with so much of what Amy said and what Katrina already highlighted. I think that the legal uncertainty that women and people who can get pregnant and providers and health systems are in right now is creating an environment of fear and chaos that, while acknowledging that our reproductive health access statewide was not great before the Dobbs decision, it is at an even lower standard now. And it's harder for our physicians and nurse practitioners to get the training that they need to provide the full spectrum of reproductive health care. It is harder for women who who don't have access to affordable insurance to get basic health care. It just ups the intensity level for all these things that were already a challenge for so many people. And, I've been looking at reproductive health for a long time, the majority of it on the service side of Planned Parenthood. And the amount of substandard care that we accept for women of reproductive age is stunning to me. Whether it is women who are struggling to get prenatal care and have healthy pregnancies and have healthy labor and delivery, women who are trying to avoid pregnancy, women who are just trying to have a healthy reproductive lifespan, we get accurate information and accurate guidance so they can make their own decisions. It is we do such a disservice to young women as they age through the reproductive lifespan to get the information that they need. And this decision has just amplified that substandard health that we accept, that we all accept. I think one thing that a lot of folks don't talk about is that as Catholic health systems have eaten up hospitals across this country, women weren't getting access to the abortion care they needed at the health system that maybe their insurance covered already. And we just accepted that as a community and was like, well, there's a hospital across town, or they can go in an ambulance somewhere else. And I just think we can do better, and we can build a system that is more equitable and that acknowledges women and people in their pregnancy needs from the day they get their period until the day they don't anymore. And we have to do better.
So I want to start by talking with you all a bit about reproductive justice to really frame the disparate impact that this lack of abortion care has on Black women. So reproductive justice is a term that was coined in the 1990s by a group of Black women, and it's defined by Sister Song as the human right to maintain personal bodily autonomy, the right to have children, the right to not have children, and the right to parent the children that we do have in safe and sustainable environments. And so what does that mean? I want to unpack that for a second. What reproductive justice recognizes and holds at the center is that there are a variety of factors, overlapping factors that affect someone's ability to access the care that they need and their ability to make informed decisions about their care. And so those factors are a wide range of things, but they can include race, gender, class, religion, age, and a number of social identities that have really been constructed in our society in such a way that access is more limited if you hold certain identities here in the United States. And so what that means is Black women have the most disparate access, particularly to healthcare in our state. And as I talk with you about what we know are the consequences of losing the right to abortion care, you'll be able to contextualize a bit more what I'm saying here about how this lack of access is so dire and deadly for Black women in Wisconsin. So first, what we already know across the nation is that Black people are more likely to be targeted when abortion is criminalized, and that includes prosecution for miscarriage. That means, and I'm happy to dive into the minutia if you all are interested in how people can be prosecuted for miscarriage, but it is happening and it has been happening. And we know that Black women are more likely to be targeted for those prosecutions. And so that means that the criminalization of abortion will only hurt Black pregnant people the most, because Black people are already disproportionately targeted by our criminal justice system for things that are more likely to result in a Black person behind bars than a person of another race behind bars. And so we already have Black people overrepresented and disproportionately represented in our criminal justice system, and the criminalization of abortion care will only add to that. Further hurting Black women, but also Black families and Black communities. The other thing we know is that abortion restrictions, as you've heard from a bit of a preview into the research, abortion restrictions actually increase the risk of delivering a low birth weight baby. And the reason why that matters is because here in Wisconsin, our Black babies are 3 times more likely to die before they reach the age of 1. And one of the leading causes of death is low birth weight. So that means without access to wanted abortion care, the risk of delivering a low birth weight baby will increase. And therefore, that means that the number of Black babies that are dying in our state will rise. And 3 times, Black babies dying at 3 times the rate of white babies here in Wisconsin is already the highest in the nation. We are quite literally the worst state in the nation for Black infant mortality. And restrictive abortion laws will only make our terrible distinction as the worst state much worse. There are 2 more things that I really want to highlight with you all. The third thing, the first of these 2 more, is that Black maternal mortality. So Black moms who are dying, it has been estimated that the number of Black maternal deaths will increase by 39% under a total abortion ban. That means in a state like Wisconsin, where our Black moms are already 5 times more likely to die from childbirth or pregnancy-related complications, are going to be at nearly double that rate of death. So that means that our Black women are already dying at 5 times the rate. And if a total abortion ban is expected to increase the mortality rate by 39%, that's nearly double the increase. And that is a level of, the current level of Black maternal deaths is wholly unacceptable and completely rooted in structural, systemic, and societal barriers to care and inequities in the way in which Black women receive care. One of the things I had mentioned earlier is about how Black women's pain today, still centuries later, is not believed. That has significant implications in all of the care that we receive, but particularly as well in our maternal care. You all may remember hearing really sad stories from celebrities, actually, like Beyonce and the Williams sisters, about the birthing experiences that they had, in which their pain during labor and during their time in pregnancy not being believed, and they almost lost their lives. And they're celebrities. And if their pain isn't believed, I hope that you can only imagine how much of a struggle it is for a regular Black woman in Wisconsin to have her needs heard by the people on her care team. And so a rate of death for Black women that's nearly double 5 times is one that is it really is heartbreaking, because we are already dying at such disparate rates, and knowing that this lack of access to abortion is going to make things worse and not better, really shows how far we have yet to go as a state to actually provide Black women the care that we need and that we deserve. And so the last one I want to share with you is that studies also show that when people are denied a wanted abortion, they're more likely to stay in abusive relationships. And we know that Black women face among the highest rates of intimate partner violence in Wisconsin. And for pregnant and postpartum people, homicide is a leading cause of death, with Black women at the greatest risk. So that means that intimate partner violence and homicide are expected to increase among those with unintended pregnancies, disproportionately affecting Black women and birthing people. And I want to note that this is not just a hypothetical. This is not just that this might happen or this is expected to happen. This is already happening. At the foundation, we've already heard from Black women who are experiencing the real and significant consequences of not having access to abortion care in our state. And I'm happy to talk about some of those stories a bit later, but I hope to impress upon you all that this isn't a reality or a future situation we're looking at. This is a present situation that has been worsened and compounded by our past lack of action and our past failure to ensure that Black women are able to have access to the care that they need to live healthy and long lives.
Thank you so much, Katrina, for leading us in reproductive justice framework and principles, and what you have spoken to, Katrina, is systemic violence, the extension of systemic violence that people are experiencing, and particularly Black people who are pregnant and birthing are experiencing across the spectrum of decision making and experience. And I appreciate your analysis. It's the kind of dot connecting that needs to happen, and that hasn't happened enough in order to full abortion from kind of a legal rights perspective, which is important and kind of not negligible, but it needs to be pulled out of a silo. And if we are going to what is to be done, what hadn't happened before, like happened now, and what is the horizon? We need to center the needs for care and dignity of Black people. We need to center the leadership of Black folks that are organizing and long term. And that is a big in order to really that perspective. I just have a little bit more to add about kind of what the experience looks like of accessing abortion now under the present circumstances. We're going to share some tactical resources that are that we think are really important for folks to have access to in order to be part of community care and so forth. I also want to come back around to criminalization and talk about not just criminalization as a legal process, but also a cultural one, and how we need to really get clear about the roots of that if we are to address what's happening. And so, as folks have mentioned, Wisconsin is one of 12 states in which people are unable to access abortion care in any clinical setting. except for, some very limited cases, and that means that people who are pregnant and not planning to be are scrambling to figure out what the options are. And the access networks are scrambling, to figure out how to create a connected ecosystem that really has both the platforms, make sure that we're not letting those fall through the cracks. Like for a person in Wisconsin who is pregnant and not wanting to be, they have a couple of options in front of them. They could call a clinic in Illinois, in Minnesota, possibly in a place further afield where clinical care is still legally allowable. And often people go further than the most geographically proximate place because of where their support networks are. And so would need to travel further, possibly lodge somewhere overnight, possibly more than one night, lose wages, figure out childcare, figure out the cost of transportation, and the whole process, and on top of the cost of the abortion. They may be able to drive somewhere and have a telehealth appointment somewhere where they can take a medication abortion in the state where they're from. And that's something that networks are going to be trying to figure out how to support more people to do. And as all of the micro panelists have named, they may be delaying their abortion care, or they may be carrying it especially in New Hampshire, watched out the implications of that for somebody's life is not. I also want to say that clinical care is not the only way that people access abortion, and so abortion is something that people have always had and done. And so more and more people may choose to self-manage abortion, even if it is not an option that they had originally or would have otherwise chosen. Self-managed abortion is having an abortion, often with pills, which is often the same abortion that one can get under the care of a physician, but outside of the basic environment. But also, many people do it with herbs, with traditional healing practices, and other means. Self-managed abortion is something that some people are pushed to do because they feel like they have other choice, no other option. It is also something that some people choose to do because they feel like it is the best option for them amidst others. No matter what, we among abortion funds believe that nobody should be compromised for any pregnancy outcome, including self-managed abortion. Unfortunately, this is something that people are privileged for, as well as people. We'll talk more about that, but I want to pivot to some resources, because I think it's really important. One of the questions that we may not get to is what can people do in these days? And I think it's really important for people to know how to access an abortion and how to support somebody to access an abortion. And also it's to be able to be an unwavering champion of whatever they do to do so. Our website, WMF, is wiabortionfund.org, and there's information there on our partner abortion funds in Illinois and Minnesota, as well as across the whole United States and beyond the U.S. For folks that need help navigating the current context in Wisconsin. We also partner closely with Pregnancy Options Wisconsin Empowered, which has a call line where folks can get some counseling support on, even a decision, how to make. INeedAN.org is a national database that anybody can enter where they are, their gestational age, and can get a list of options for what is the support available to them. Independent and Planned Parenthood clinics are updating that as well as abortion funds. All kind of good go to. And in terms of learning more about abortion. Abortion on Our Own Terms is a resource that has identified collaborative. One of the, I wanted to kind of again broaden, to criminalization. And I know we want to get to, additional questions, but, one of the most serious consequences of the Supreme Court decision is that, there is a, like, is the deepened entrenchment of the criminalization of abortion, and how it connects to the range of pregnancy options. And like I said before, criminalization is not just a legal process. It's not just one that happens through the criminal system. It's true that there's criminal law and there's civil law, and we need to be clear about that. And SB 8 in Texas was and is a civil law, a civil measure that creates means in which any resident of Texas can target any other resident of Texas for having an abortion beyond 6 weeks or being suspected of having one. And so it's an example of like something that is in civil law. I'm not a lawyer. There are really lawyers, so I'm going to stop speaking about the law soon. But that perpetuates a culture of punishment that really, at the heart of it, is about about regulating that some people's bodily autonomy is supported and allowed and centered, and some people aren't, and that people should be punished for having, pregnancy outcomes, reproductive outcomes. But it also is much broader than that. We need to connect the dots, so that we're not exceptionalizing abortion and saying that nobody should be punished for having an abortion, as if to imply that other ways that people are criminalized are okay. And we need to really understand like how how reliant the U.S. society is on leveraging carcerality of prisons and policing and criminalization as a tool that extends into so many functions of the state, and in fact many ways that that we rely on gender.
Cynthia, one of the first things that I did when I learned of the decision was donate to WMF. I volunteered. I think at the time you were taking volunteers who might help transport women across state lines. Did you get a big response like that? And is that happening now? Are people helping?
Yeah, we have never seen, like, both WMF Wisconsin, as well as abortion funds across the entire network that I work with, have never seen the kind of outpouring of support and desire to be part of the solution as we have. I would say since the week of the Supreme Court decision on May 2nd, and definitely as of June 24th. And it's been incredible to have conversations that I never expected to have with neighbors and people at the grocery store and things like that. And to really feel this deep questioning and reckoning with how can I, what can I do now? And also I think this is an expectation, maybe just saying that WMF is an all volunteer organization. And we are, we and other abortion funds and independent clinics and other folks that are part of the abortion funds are doing a lot of sleep planning and crisis and rapid response. And so we are figuring out what is sustainable for the long haul. And so in terms of action, I'm continuing to donate to make sure that people are supporting are able to support, talking about access options, fundraising, and as an organizing process, and letting more people know and giving them a means of support. And also talking about abortion in your spheres of influence are some of the most important things.
Katrina, how can individuals, how can the League of Women Voters collectively and other like-minded groups help remove the abortion ban in Wisconsin or help provide access to those who need reproductive services?
That's a really great question. Thank you. I want to begin by answering that question with like a framework for you all. I hope that you will bear in mind, and then I'll follow it up with some actionable steps. But so what is really incredibly important and impactful, going off of what Cynthia said about having conversations, it's really important that we all take the time to do our own individual learning and understanding about how Black women and other women of color as well disparately experience the healthcare system and access to abortion care. And with that learning and that understanding, ensuring to have conversations with your friends and your family about the fact that Black women deserve reproductive freedom. And I really want to emphasize that freedom word, because we deserve more than just the rights, more than just the access, but the actual freedom to make our own judgments about our bodies and the care that we need. And I hope that's the sentiment that you'll carry with you through your own reflection and research and through your own conversations with those you love and care about. Because here in Wisconsin, we could and should, and I envision a future in which we are having those conversations a lot more often. And the other item I want to talk with you about is the Foundation for Black Women's Wellness. We are developing a policy blueprint for Black women's health called Black Women Deserve. And so we are collaborating with UW Core on the data and research elements to really pull together and outline a roadmap for decision makers, both in our state but across the nation, on policy levers of change that will actually transform the health of Black women. And our approach to developing these policy recommendations is not only community informed, but community led and community advised and community really just at the helm of every step of the policy development process in a way that is not typically done, and in a way that needs to be done to ensure that our policies will actually improve the disparate outcomes of Black women, children, and families. And so I encourage you all to support the policy blueprint when it is released. Truly, Black women and allies alike have the power to mobilize and urge and call on our elected officials and others in decision-making positions to protect the reproductive freedom of Black women and to protect the policy interests of Black women more generally. So I look forward to seeing you all support that in the many ways that that'll be available. And I also encourage you, if you are able to, absolutely, you're always welcome at any time to contribute to the foundation and to help ensure that we can continue to do this work of really ensuring that Black women's voices and perspectives are centered in our most critical policy and legal conversations here in Wisconsin.
Nicole? What do we do to change this?
What can I add to what they said already? I think maybe I'll just amplify what Katrina said about each of us using our individual privilege and power. We all have a sphere of influence, and talking to the people in your life about why you support reproductive freedom, what this means to you, the stories you've heard, the experiences that have impacted you makes a difference. Katrina and I, when we were at Planned Parenthood, we would always say, people say, what can we do? We want to do more than just donate, which donating is so important to help continue this work. And you would always say, talk to the people in your lives. You cannot underestimate the power that you have, even the people that you think vehemently disagree with your perspective. If they care about you, they will listen, and it might take weeks, it might take months, it might take years, but we can feel complicated feelings about abortion, and we can move this forward together and still feel those things. We have to agree on the basic truth that we all deserve reproductive autonomy, bodily autonomy. Like, there's no, at least for me, there's no compromising on that basic truth. And we can have our feelings about the other things. So have those conversations. They are so meaningful, and also, of course, vote. So it's not the answer for sure, but it is the beginning to the answer. And we have to, every single chance we get to vote your people to vote, volunteer with the league, volunteer to make sure that our elections are working well. That ultimately is our voice, and we have the power, so we must use it.
Before you pass the mic, since we're out of voting, how do you see Wisconsin voters reacting to this? Like Kansas or other states? What do you think?
If only we had direct democracy here. Unfortunately, we don't have the ability to have a statewide referendum like they did in Kansas. I think that anecdotally, and I don't work on the politics side anymore, but I still talk to a lot of the folks who do. I think anecdotally, we are seeing voter registration has increased since the Dobbs decision came out in Wisconsin. A friend of mine who is an organizer said that between the end of June and the end of August, the category where we saw the most increase in voter registration was women in CD4, which is Countryman Moore's district. So I think that folks who are out there doing voter reg work are doing really important work. And I think that for years in Wisconsin, politicians on both sides of the aisle have used abortion as a tool to organize their base. Under this idea that Roe would always be there, and we could sort of live in this world where we could have this theoretical fight. And that world is gone. That protection is gone. People have to put their money where their mouth is now. And if they are going to say that I get up every day to make sure we don't have access to abortion in Wisconsin, they're going to have to take those votes. They're going to have to look at their constituents and say, I think that your bodily autonomy is not as important as mine. And we need to call them to account on that. They can't hide from Roe anymore. And I do think we're going to see a difference. We saw in Wisconsin 100,000 people on the streets in Madison at the very threat of President Trump putting justice on the 12th federal Roe. That was the threat of it. Now we are living through this reality. And I think that people are going to act on it.
And one more for you, Nicole. What's the status of the Wisconsin's trigger law that the Attorney General did file suit over?
Yeah, so I think we should. So Wisconsin has a law that has been on our statute books since 1849 that has never been repealed. But just to put a note of clarity on it, it is not a trigger law. It didn't pop back to life but its legal status is unknown, which is why the Attorney General filed a lawsuit. He has said that he thinks it is unenforceable, the law. District attorneys across the state have said that they also believe that it's unenforceable, but we know that there's a coordinated effort of people who want to enforce it, who said, well, maybe I will enforce it. So we have all this confusion in the legal sphere. The Attorney General said, we need a court to clarify it and tell us that the law is not enforceable. That's what his lawsuit asked the court to do. And right now, that lawsuit is in Dane County Circuit Court. The legislature and the Attorney General are fighting about what court is appropriate and who should even sue who. And I think over the next few months that will work its way through the system. It is really important for us to remember this is not a solution in any sense of the term. This is mitigation until we can have a political movement that is able to protect access to abortion in our state. But this is one tool that we have to try to limit the harm as best we can.
And we did have a question online and wanted you to comment on that lawsuit. I think we just accomplished that. If you have a question for our panelists, we're running short on time, so please write it on a card or via Zoom. You can type it into chat. Getting to you, Amy, do you have any thoughts on how individuals or the League of Women Voters as a whole can help restore reproductive freedom in this house?
To be honest, I don't have my colleague. It all perfect, so I'll give it time.
Yeah. Well, what about, I did want to follow up with you on when this decision first came down, or did come out with what will happen in Wisconsin if the rule falls. And you mentioned that there would be some who would travel out of state, some who would maybe manage their abortions at home. Do you have any idea of what's happening now in terms of that?
We have systems in place that we're already tracking where people are going when they leave the state for abortion through relationships with clinics and funds. What's more difficult to measure are those people who self-manage their abortion. And that's something that the abortion research field is grappling with. So that's, I can really switch my experience. So I can't share with you any decision, but that obviously one of the people we want to understand. And we also want to better understand those people who would have chosen abortion but weren't able to get it. They weren't able to afford to leave state, but all the reasons to prevent people from traveling to seek care or the care wasn't available. So that's something that we will be carefully measuring. And actually there's efforts across the country to very systematically measure the impact, and we're part of that. The self-management is a little different, but we using tools that evaluate social media, who's posting on Reddit, who's posting on other forums. We're trying to come up with estimates.
A question that maybe Nicole can address more. If abortion is not accessible in Wisconsin, how much danger is there that women who leave the state and get one will be prosecuted? How about for people who assist? How much trouble will you get?
That's a good question, and I will answer with what I know. I think that one thing that's really important to understand, while we do have this lack of clarity in the law, is self-managed abortion, and also to put in the context of what Katrina and Cynthia talked about, it's criminalization in a much broader sense. Self-managed abortion is not illegal in Wisconsin, and people should understand that there are that with criminal law, the 1849 ban is criminal liability for physicians right now. People also should understand that you can provide information, you can give rides, you can donate, you can drive someone to Illinois or Minnesota, and that is not legal. We do not have individual criminal liability for that. There, I think, is questions about if I ordered medication abortion and gave it to Katrina, that is real criminal liability. We could talk about it. We could drive together to a clinic, but if I'm obtaining the medication and passing it on to someone else, that is a risk, a criminal risk right now. Again, self-managed abortion should not be a criminal risk, except in the circumstances which we've already discussed, where the policing of Black and brown bodies is a real risk.
Another question, because of gerrymandering, it is unlikely the Wisconsin legislature will support abortion access in the immediate future. What options are there for creating change given this constraint? What legislation might be on the horizon? Nicole, you want to try that one?
Let me add something about criminalization, because I really get your breakdown of kind of like what liability exposure a person may have for having an abortion, supporting somebody to various means. And also we know from tracking antis that there is a coordinated on-ground movement that is ready to basically try to freeze abortion, support and personal decision making by creating lawsuits, which bringing criminal charges up the whole premise of SB 8 in Texas, and there is existing harassment by an entire class of progress lawsuits and bringing charges and trying to drag folks through the legal system at great cost of money. For fees as well as capacity, and that's a tactic, and that's part of the broader culture. And that's
Let me just add something to that question that one of our audience members had on, what legislation might be on the horizon. There was some talk the Dane County Board of Supervisors about the possibility of a referendum to take that bill off. Or the law off the books, or something that might be done on a county by county basis, sort of like the fair maps and gerrymandering. Do you foresee something like that happening, perhaps?
I do think that there are actions that our local elected officials can take that our elected officials can take to build the movement and build the pressure and build the narrative. A Dane County referendum is a statement that is important and it draws a line for people. It will not have a policy impact right now. But even so, the gerrymander, right? Who wants to talk about gerrymandering? It's been 10 years and now we've got a bad court decision and there is a real feeling that are we going to have to live through another 10 years of this? The gerrymander, if I had a magic wand and there was something I could fix, I think that would be it, because it would break free so many of the policy choices that we, as a state, the majority of us in Wisconsin want to see happen. I don't think we're going to have to wait 10 years. I think there will be other opportunities for us to address the gerrymander. And I can talk more about that later individually with people if they want. It's important to know that we elect our judges in Wisconsin, not just our legislature. And if the state court decides, the state court could decide a partisan gerrymandering case in the future. And we could have a Wisconsin Supreme Court that would understand the illegality under the Wisconsin Constitution. I also want to say that we can elect U.S. senators who can get rid of the filibuster, and we can break some of this minority rule in Congress. That is not unattainable for us. And if we can break the filibuster, if we can pass some stronger protections in federal law, yes, people will fight about it in court, but we have to move these pieces forward in some way. And we really do have the power to make these changes. This is not dreaming of the future that we want for everyone. We have to continue to do the personal work and the work in our communities. But we do have the opportunity to vote for candidates who support our values and pushing forward.
Briefly, I really want to underscore that no great policy change, no great legislative change has ever happened without a shift in our societal values first. And so I think that it's really important to talk about policy and what can be coming down the pipeline legislatively. That is my life. I'm obsessed with policy. And it's really important to remember at all times that if we just focus on the policy and not on shifting the way as a society we think about and view these matters, we think about and view other people, we think about and judge and place stereotypes and blame and things like that on Black people, for as long as we don't grapple with actually shifting those values, then any policy change that we do make is not going to be lasting. Because at the end of the day, taking it full circle, back to what I first talked about, Black women's pain wasn't believed during the time of slavery. Black women's pain still isn't believed today. Our policies have shifted and changed a whole lot in these last hundreds, 200 something, in these last several hundreds of years. Depends on what timeline you're starting at. Okay. But so our policies have changed a lot. But the belief that Black women don't feel pain, that societal value has not changed. And because of that, the harm is still present and disparate and detrimental. And so I want to say this as well, just to frame this whole point that I'm expressing here. Alice Walker, who is a Black woman author, she said, the easiest way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. We all have power in this room, online, across the state. We all have the power to change the way, even if it's changed in small ways, the way our families and the way our social spheres of influence, the way we collectively think about and view matters like abortion. And I really hope that you all do feel empowered to know that it's not hopeless unless you believe it's hopeless. And I know I don't believe it's hopeless. I have such a vision for Wisconsin, especially in which a reality in which we really are able to ensure that everyone has freedom, access, and the right to make their reproductive healthcare decisions that they should already be trusted to make.
We are running short on our time. I'm going to ask you all just to give us some concluding remarks on what do you want to see happen? Where do you go from here?
Hard to follow.
I know that's saying.
What can I add to that? I guess what would I ask for? The civic engagement we're talking about, don't give up, vote, volunteer, educate, got to keep going. And some of the races that Nicole pointed out coming next spring, even don't lose sight of them. As we are dealing with this new landscape and hopefully building a new, let's try to build something better and not just build on the mistakes and the centuries of mistakes we've made. I think that there's two things that have come up here that I want to raise. One is continuing to reduce abortion stigma. We're talking about abortion now. I think in the last few months, even this year, like people are using that word more, but really making sure people who need and have had abortions, reducing the stigma of the experience, something we haven't talked too much about. And most importantly, it's listening to those most impacted and following their lead.
Yep. I agree with that. You know, when we think about the movement of building a better, more inclusive, stronger democracy, we have to accept the fact that that movement is not a straight line. It's not linear, and we're going to have setbacks, and we're going to have great successes or what feel like great successes. And then we're going to step back and say, oh, wait a minute, we didn't think about all of these things. And to be in this work for the long haul, we have to celebrate our successes. We have to be committed to the individual small changes like Katrina talked about. We have to understand how our individual changes bridge to systems change. We have to do both. We have to do both, just like we have to have good policy. We have to build power. And we have to, at least for me, be okay with failing and with making mistakes and with thinking about how do I take learnings and try again, because we're going to have to keep trying, and people's lives and families are they're on the line, and I might be protected from some of that, and I need to recognize that and think about how can I use my power and privilege in a way that amplifies the voices and strategies of folks who don't have that privilege.
Okay, so for my closing comments, I want to share two more quotes with you. And I know you're thinking two more, girl, but I promise you will love them. So what I want to start with is one of my all-time favorites. It's a quote by Socrates, one of our oldest philosophers. He said that the secret to real change is not by fighting the old, but by building the new. And I know that in Wisconsin, especially, we are going to be laser focused on building the new. We are not trying to go back to a Roe world, because when Roe was in place, it still didn't provide equitable access. We don't want to go back there. We want better. We're going to build better. And we're going to believe that better is possible. And the other quote I want to share is Eleanor Roosevelt said that the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. And I believe in the beauty of Wisconsin. I believe in the beauty of our state's potential to protect the reproductive freedom of Black women and all Wisconsinites. And I believe that we can go from being the worst state in the nation for Black infant mortality, among the very worst for Black maternal health, to one of the very best states to raise a Black family. I believe it's possible. I hope you all believe it's possible too, because this fight is nowhere near over. And at the foundation, we are going to continue advocating and working tirelessly to ensure that social, political, and structural change does happen and does ensure the protection of our reproductive freedom.
So I've worked with the National Wildlife Promotion Funds for nearly 8 years. I only recently joined the board of WMF Wisconsin. And something that I want you to know is that abortion funds are meshed. Abortion funds are magical organizations that exist as part of a legacy of communities caring for each other and having them. And that care is a radical work. We distribute resources and being there to support people to access the care they need and deserve no matter what is a radical work. And because the best solutions come from the ground up, to paraphrase my really colleague Katrina, we know about the state. Communities are going to care for each other, always have and always will. And if we continue to do that and know that it is ourselves that keep each other safe, it is ourselves that build towards all of the change and potential for all the top of our daily actions in our closest relationships. We will, exist in a way that will not lead to the threat of the what they're trying to stop us from doing. And I so agree with what Katrina said that we have a tradition of saying that row should be the floor, not the ceiling, but actually the foundation that row was is no longer the house that we need. And so I'm really grateful for being part of this conversation and, not just reacting to the moment, but being really organizing and advocating to more.
Wonderful. I'm going to ask one more comment from Nicole, because we called this forum White Vote, Reproductive, and Civil Rights. Talk a little bit about what other civil rights are in danger based on the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling.
So I think that if we are looking at the United States Supreme Court, we need to believe their actions and not their words. And while Roe is not the solution that we need now, it laid the foundation for jurisprudence of many other privacy rights that we take for granted, or not take for granted. Many other privacy rights are placed in that jurisprudence, and we need to be paying attention to that. This Supreme Court is a captured court. The systematic effort by right-wing funders and the right-wing legal groups like Civil Society have changed the face of this court. We cannot rely on the federal court system as it is now to protect and expand civil rights. It is not the same court that it was 30 years ago. And I think I said this earlier, but that is on purpose. There has been a coordinated movement to change the face of that court, and it has been successful. So we need to do this grassroots work. We need, I might be a couple of days behind, but I know I think the U.S. Senate is supposed to passing Senator Baldwin's bill that would enshrine marriage protection in federal law. We need to think about all of these privacy protections in a broader scope and be doing the grassroots and movement building work to protect them, because this federal court system is not going to do it for us. And we need to think about how do we change the culture and the character of this court. There are all kinds of reforms. We don't have to have lifetime tenure. We get rid of the filibuster. Let's expand the federal court system overall, and not get bogged down in these political, pundit, rhetorical arguments. We need to create real change in our court system, way more than the Supreme Court. But so I think we need to be paying attention, use our vote to vote for candidates who support the things that we support, who will get rid of the filibuster, who will expand the federal courts, who will pass protections in Congress and in our state legislatures.
I wish we could go on and on. We did go over time, but it was worth it. Thank you all very, very much for being here. Cynthia Lynn, Vice President of the WMF in Wisconsin, Katrina Morrison, Director of Policy Advocacy and Outreach at the Foundation for Black Women's Wellness, Nicole Safar, Executive Director of October, and Katie Lewis, Associate Director of the UW Collaborative for Reproductive Equity. And thanks to Madison College's Goodman's Health Campus for giving us this space. And let me also thank everyone who helped put this forum together, our program director for the League of Women Voters of Dane County, Sue Jenick, Amanda Inks, compiles the discussion materials, Wendy Hathaway for her leadership and for publicity and all sorts of other things, Amanda Kruger for technical assistance. There are upcoming opportunities to continue the conversation as our guests advocated and plan actions. The League of Women Voters of Dane County discussion units will be meeting next week. You can find out the days and times on our website. Also, the September book club selection, Policing the Womb, Invisible Women and the Criminalization of Motherhood by Michelle Goodwin will be discussed this Thursday night and Saturday morning via Zoom. There's more information also on the website, lwvdanecounty.org. And finally, our series of forums will continue next month with Protect Your Right to Vote proposed election laws on Monday, October 10th at 6:30 p.m. On this forum, it will be via Zoom and here at the Madison College's Goodman South Campus, I think in this very room. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Dane County, I'm Joy Cardine. Thank you all for being here, and let's give everybody work. Thanks for coming.